Hello dear viewers, welcome to another video tutorial of this YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to be focusing on question number 10, which is coming from the ECZ examination for General Certificate of Education, Ordinary Level, Additional Mathematics, Paper 1. And the question that we're going to be interested in today's tutorial, it is falling under the topic, which is vectors, which the external candidates wrote in 2023. So now let's try to check where the question is located in this paper. Let's try to check where the question is located in this paper. So it is question number 10. Let's try to check. And the question is falling under the topic, which is vectors. So this is the page that contains question number 10. This is the page that we have. So okay, so that is the question that we're going to be interested in today's tutorial. It is question number 10, which is falling under the topic, which is vectors. So this question has two parts. It has part A and part B. Part A carries 4 marks and then part B carries 5 marks, bringing the total to 9 marks. So this question, which is question number 10, is covering 9 marks in total. So let's try to go through each and every part of this question. We're going to start with the first part, which is part A. So part A states that if vector A is equal to 2i minus 3j, vector B is equal to 3i minus 2j, and vector C is equal to 4i plus j, find the value of P and of Q such that P vector A plus Q vector B is equal to vector C. So this is the first part of the question, which is part A. Let's now go to another part of this question, which is part B. Part B states that the points A and B have position vectors 3i minus 5j and I plus 2tj respectively, given that the point 2, 5 lies on the line AB, find the value of t. So this is what we have as the question. This is the question number 10. We have gone through the entire question. And the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to get into the solving. But before we do that, I would like to remind you that if you haven't yet subscribed, you should subscribe so that you are always going to be updated with the latest information on this YouTube channel. And as you subscribe, don't forget to turn on the notification button so that you are always going to be notified when there is any latest information on this YouTube channel. So don't forget to share so that others can also enjoy the tutorials of additional mathematics, and don't forget to comment so that we can hear out your views. Last but not the least, you can like this video by giving it a thumbs up. So now let's try to quickly get into the solving. So that is what we have there. So we're going to start with the first part of the question, which is part M. So when you look at part A, we're given 3 vectors. We're given 3 position vectors. We're given the position vector for A and B and also C. So now the question is like, find the value of P and of Q, given that we have the expression which is P vector A plus Q vector B is equal to vector C. So now, what are we supposed to do in such a case? So we're going to consider what we have. We're going to consider the expression which we're given, which is P vector A plus Q vector B is equal to vector C. So what we're going to do is that we're going to write it like that. P vector A plus Q vector B is equal to vector C. So the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to start substituting what we have. So we're going to maintain P simply because we don't have the value for P. That is what we're interested in. We want to find the value of P and of Q. So we're going to write them just as they are. So we're going to replace the vector A with what it equals. In such a case, we're given that vector A is equal to 2i minus 3j. So we're going to replace A with vector A with 2i minus 3j. So that is what we have, and then we have plus like that, and then Q is going to be maintained like that, and then we have vector B. So vector B, we're given the expression for vector B, we have it as 3i minus 2j. So we're going to write it like that. So we're going to replace vector B with 3i minus 2j, and then is equal to, so we have the vector C. So the vector C is equal to 4i plus j, like that. So now the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to represent these into the column vector form. So I like representing, when I'm solving vectors, I like representing them in the column vector form simply because it becomes easier in that way. So if you want, you can work it out directly, but in such a case, in this tutorial, we're going to represent them in the column vector form so that we get it clearly. So we're going to write P. So the way that we're going to represent it into the column vector form, we're going to write, we're first going to start with the P that we have there. We're going to start with P, and then we're going to open the parentheses like that, and then in the parentheses above, we have 2i minus 3j. So now in the column vector form, we are not going to have those letters which are I and j. So what we're simply going to do is that we're first going to get that one which is 2, the one which is having the I. So the one which is having the I is the one which should be at the top if you are representing it into the column vector form, and the one which is having the j is the one which should be down when you are representing it into the column vector form. So in such a case, the one which is having j, it is -3. So the -3 is going to be down. It is going to be like that, and then we're going to maintain the plus there, and then q again we're going to do the same things. The 3 is going to be at the top simply because 3 is attached to the I, and then another one we have -2 which is attached to the j. So we said that the one which is attached to the j, it should be down. So in such a case, we're going to have -2 down there, and then is equal to, and then we are going to open the parentheses like that, and then the one which is attached to the I is the one which should be at the top again. So we're going to write 4 up, and then the one which is attached to the j, it is 1. In such a case, it is just the same as x. So if you say x, 1 is attached to the x, so it is the same as this case. You can't say 1j. That is the reason why you can't see the 1. So in such a case, just need to know that 1 is attached to that j. So in such a case, it is 1, like that. And then the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to take the simplification. So we're going to start with the first step that we have. So what we are simply going to do is that we're going to get the top terms that we have, the top terms. So in such a case, we're going to start with those which are at the top. So that is what we're going to get. So we're going to get 2, 3, and 4. And don't forget those which are outside the brackets. So when you see that P which is outside the parenthesis there, so the P which is outside the parenthesis, it is simply applying to both 2 and -3. So we're first going to start with the top terms that we have. So we're going to multiply P by 2. So P is going to be multiplied by 2. That is what we have there. And then plus, the plus is going to maintain like that. And then Q is going to be multiplied by 3 that we have there. So Q, and then it will be multiplied by the 3, and then is equal to, again, another term that we have which is at the top there, which is on the right hand side of the equation, it is +4. So we're going to write it just as it is. And then the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to perform the calculations and the evaluation. So in such a case, we're going to say P times 2, it will give you 2P, and then Q times 3, it will, and then the 4 is going to maintain like that. So this is the first equation that we have. So we're going to say that this is our equation 1. This is the first equation that we have. So again, we're going to find another equation. How are we going to find another equation? So for us to find another equation, what we have to simply do is that we are going to consider the terms which are down. So in such a case, the terms which are down, we have -3, -2, and 1. So we said that those which are outside the parentheses, which are P and Q, they are applying to each term which are enclosed in the parentheses. So that is one thing that you need to keep in mind. So again, in such a case, we're going to say P is going to be multiplied by the term which is down. In such a case, it is -3. So we're going to say P open parenthesis -3 and then close parenthesis plus, and then the Q is going to be multiplied by those which are down. Again, it is going to be multiplied by the term which is down. So in such a case, it is -2. And then the equal sign is going to be maintained like that, and then there we have 1 like that. And then we're going to do the simplification and the calculations. So in such a case, P times -3, it will give you -3P. Again, there we have Q times -2, it will give you -2Q. So that is where the negative is coming from. So it is going to be -2Q, and then after the equal sign, it is going to be 1. The 1 is going to be maintained like that. So that is the second equation that we have. This is the equation number 2. So this is equation number 2 that we have there. This is the second equation. So now, what is the next thing that we're going to do? What we're simply going to do is that we're going to solve these two equations simultaneously. Remember, we're interested in the values of P and of Q. So we're going to solve these two equations simultaneously so that we solve for the value of P and of Q. So now, in such a case, we're going to consider the substitution method. You can use whichever way which is going to work out with you. In this tutorial, we're going to use the substitution method. So we're going to consider the first equation, which is 2P plus 3Q is equal to 4. And what we're simply going to do is that we're going to make P the subject. We're going to make P the subject in the first equation. And when you make P the subject, it will be P is equal to 4 minus 3Q over 2. That is what you're going to be given. And then you're going to consider the second equation, which is -3P minus 2Q is equal to 1. So what you have to simply do is that you're going to get that equation, which is -3P minus 2Q is equal to 1. And wherever there is P in the second equation, we're going to replace with what P equals. And P equals to 4 minus 3Q over 2. That is what we're going to do, and it is going to be like that. We're going to enclose it in parentheses like that, and it is going to appear like that. It is going to be like -3 open parenthesis 4 minus 3Q over 2, and then close parenthesis minus 2Q is equal to 1. And then what we're simply going to do is that we're going to multiply each term by +2. So we're going to multiply each term by the denominator that we have in the parenthesis. So we want to get rid of that denominator. We don't want to have the fractions. We want to have the exact numbers. So in such a case, we're going to multiply each term by +2. So when you consider the first term that we have there, we have -3 open parenthesis 4 minus 3Q over 2 close parenthesis. When you multiply that term by 2, it is the 2 is going to be cancelled, so you're not going to have the denominator as 2, you're going to have the denominator as 1. And when you divide 1 by that term itself, it is going to give you the term. So in such a case, we're simply going to remain with a -3 open parenthesis 4 minus 3Q. That is what we're simply going to have. And then -2Q times 2, it will give you -4. -4Q. And then 1 times 2, it will give you the value which is 2. So the next thing, again, we're going to do the simplification and the calculations. So we're going to multiply -3 times 4. It will give you the value which is -12. And then -3 times -3Q, it will give you +9. So it is going to be plus 9Q. So again, the -4Q is going to be maintained like that. And then it is going to be like that. And that is equal to +2. And then the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to do the simplification. So when you try to look at 9q and negative 4q, those are like terms. You can do the simplification and the calculations with those. So you can say 9q minus 4q and it will give you 5q. So again, you're going to take that negative 12 to the other side of the equation. You're going to take it to the right hand side of the equation and it will be the positive value. So in such a case, it is going to be the positive and it is going to be 14. So when you say 2 plus 12, it will give you, since the negative 12 is going to be positive when it goes to the other side, it is going to be the plus. So in such a case, it is going to be 2 plus 12, and 2 plus 12, it will give you the value which is 14. So that is where the 14 is coming from. So again, remember we are interested in the value of q and of p. So in such a case, we're going to find the value of q. So the way that we're going to find the value of q is that we're going to divide the both sides of the equation by 5. We're simply going to make q the subject. So the 5 on the left hand side is going to be cancelled and it is going to be like that. 14 divided by 5, it is going to give you the value which is 2.8. So this is what we have as the value of q. So the value of q is equal to 2.8. Again, we're going to find the value of p. So the value of p is going to come from that expression which we made. We said that p is equal to 4 minus 3q over 2. So we said that p, so the value of p is going to come from this expression which we made. So we made the expression for p as p is equal to 4 minus 3q over 2. So this is coming from the first equation. So in the first equation, we made p the subject. That's one thing that you need to remember. So p is equal to 4 minus 3q over 2. So now we're going to replace wherever there's q in this equation with what we found. So we have 2.8 as our q. So it is going to be like 4 minus 3, open parenthesis, 2.8, and then close parenthesis like that. And then there down we have positive 2. So when you try to perform the calculations, there, it is going to give you the value which is negative 2.2. So this is the value of p that we have. This is the value of p that we have. So we have now found the values of p and q. So we have the value of q as positive 2.8 and the value of p as negative 2.2. So this is what we have there. So now we can say that therefore q is equal to 2.8 and then we have the value of p as negative 2.2. So this is what we have. So this is how you easily score marks in the exam. Q is equal to 2.8 and P is equal to negative 2.2. So this is how you easily score marks in the exam. This is how you find the value of P and of Q. I hope you have gotten the concepts. So this is how it is. Let's now go to the other part of the question, which is part B. So part B says that the points A and B have position vectors 3i minus 5j and I plus 2tj respectively. Given that the point 2, 5 lies on the line AB, find the value of t. So we're given the position vectors for the points A and B. So the point A, we're given that the position vector, it is 3i minus 5j, and also the position vector for B, it is I plus 2tj. So that is what we have. So we're given another point which is not denoted by any letter, but in this tutorial we're going to denote it by a certain letter. So we're given the point in coordinate form. We're given that point which lies on the line AB in the coordinate form, which is 2, 5. So that is what we're going to do. So we're supposed to find the value of t. So what is the first thing that we're going to do? We're going to assume something. So we're going to assume the line which we have. So we have the line which is line AB. We have the line AB. So we're going to denote the points that we have. We're going to denote the point A and the point B that we have, and then that point which is 2,5 is going to be denoted by the point C. It is going to be denoted by the letter which is C. So this letter is going to be helpful in our calculations. We're going to use that letter in our calculations so that it becomes easier for us. So now we don't know the direction. If it was going from A to B or from B to A, we're going to assume that, but in such a case, we're going to assume that it was going from A to B. But if you want, you can also assume that it was going from B to A. What we're simply going to do is that we're going to get the position vector. We're going to get the position vector. So we have the position vector for A as 3i minus 5j. So this one, it was going from it has the direction vector which is OM. It was going from O to A. That is what we have. So vector OA is equal to 3i minus 5j, and then B is going to be like vector OB is equal to I plus 2tj. That is what we have there. And we're going to denote the point C with what we have. We have the point C as 2,5. Now this is going to be converted into the vector form. Now how is it going to be converted into the vector form? So when you check the x-coordinate, the x-coordinate is going to have the I. So the x-coordinate is going to be combined with the letter I. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. If you're converting from coordinate form to vector form, the x-coordinate is the one which is combined with the I. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. And then the y-coordinate is combined with the j. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. So the x-coordinate is going to have the variable of I, and the y-coordinate is going to have the variable of j. So this is how we convert this to the position vector form. Okay, so now since we have all the position vectors that we have the position vector for A, the position vector for B, and also the position vector for C. So we're going to get to the other step. So now the other step that you need to take is that you're going to find the direction vector for AB. You're going to find the direction vector for AB. So from the point A to B. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. But if you want, you can also find the direction vector from the point C to B. So, but in such a case, in this tutorial, we're going to take the direction vector from A to B. If you want, you can take from C to B. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. But in this tutorial, we're going to take the direction vector from A to B. So now, how are we going to find the direction vector from A to B? So, the direction vector from A to B is equal to, so the direction vector AB. So for you to know what the direction vector AB, you're going to take the first letter that we have, and the first letter that we have, it is A. So A is going to be like that. It is going to be like AO. So it is going to be vector AO plus, and then we are going to consider B. So B is going to be like OB. It is going to be vector OB like that. So it is going to move from O to B. So what we now have, we have the direction vector AB as equal to AO, vector AO plus vector OB. So now we're going to start replacing what we have. When you try to consider in the statement or in the expression that we made, we have the direction vector OA, but in this expression, if we want to find the direction vector AB, we're supposed to know what the direction vector AO is. But in the statement, we have OA. But in this statement, we have AO. What are we supposed to do? So since these two are opposite to each other, so in the first statement we have O, which is before A, but in the other statement we have O, which is after A. What are you supposed to do in such a case? So what you're supposed to do is that you need to take note that this is the reverse form. Now if it is the reverse form, what are you supposed to do? You're going to take the negative, you're going to introduce the negative, so this part is going to be the negative. And what we're simply going to do is that we're going to represent this into the column vector form, just as we said earlier. But if you want, you can work it out directly using the letters that we have, which is I and J. So it depends with what you like. But as I said earlier, I said that I like working with vectors when they're in the column vector form. So we're going to use the column vector form in this tutorial. But if you want, you can work it out in a way which you like. Again, we said that what is combined with the I, in such a case, we're going to consider the 3. The 3 is going to be at the top when you consider that vector OM. So the 3 is going to be at the top simply because it is the one which is which is combined with the I, and the one which is combined with the I, it is the one which should be at the top. And then the one which is combined with the J, it is the one which should be down. So in such a case, we have the one which is combined with the J as -5. So it is going to be -5 like that, and then plus. What about OB? So OB, we have it just as it is. We have the direction vector OB just as it is, even in the statement. So there's no need of us taking the negative or adding a minus, simply because it is just as it is. So there's no need of doing that. So we're going to take the one which is combined with the I. It is the one which is going to be at the top, and in such a case the number which is combined with the I, it is 1. So we have 1 there, and then there we have 2t. So 2t is the one which is combined with the J, so it is going to be like that. So the next thing that we're going to do is that we're going to do the simplification and the calculations. So vector AB is equal to, so it is going to be like vector AB is equal to, so the negative is going to be considered with the 3. We're going to start with the negative and the 3, which is at the top. So you're going to say negative times +3, and it will give you the value which is -3. Then again, you're going to consider the plus, you're going to consider the positive, so it is going to be like plus, and then you're going to consider another one which is 1. So we are going to consider another one which is in the parenthesis, which is enclosed in the parenthesis, and it should be at the top. So in such a case, it is 1. So I'm going to write 1 like that. And then we're going to consider those which are down again. So remember, the one which is outside the parenthesis is applying to both 3 and -5. So earlier we multiplied the negative with +3, but this time around we're going to multiply it with the -5. So it is going to be like negative, open parenthesis, -5, and then the plus is going to be maintained like that, the one which is between the parentheses. So it is going to be like that, and then the term which is down again, when it comes to the other parenthesis, it is 2t. So it is 2t like that, and then we're going to close the parenthesis. And then we're going to do the simplification. So -3 plus 1, it will give you the value which is -2. And then when you consider those which are down, when you say negative times -5, it will give you the value which is +5. So it is going to be 5 plus 2t like that. So this is the direction vector AB. So just as we said, if you want, you can find the direction vector CB. But in such a case, in this tutorial, we're going to find we are finding the direction vector AB. So direction vector AB is equal to -2, and then down there we have 5 plus 2t. That is what we have there. So we have the direction vector from A to B. That is what we have found. Again, the next thing that we're going to consider is that we're going to consider the direction vector from A to C. We're going to consider the direction vector from A to C. How are we going to do that? We're going to consider the direction vector from A to C. It is going from A to C, and then we're going to say that direction vector AC is equal to AO, just as we said earlier. So, and then plus OC, like that. So direction vector AC is equal to direction vector AO plus direction vector OC. So vector AC is equal to, we're going to consider AO. So in the statement, we're given the statement, we have AO. In the expression that we have just made, we have AO. But in the statement, we have OA. So in the statement, we have the direction vector OA from O to A. We have the expression from O to A as 3I minus 5j. In this expression which we have made, we have the direction vector AO, meaning that this is the reverse form, just as we said earlier. So it is going to be the negative. So we're going to take the negative like that. And then we're going to represent this into the column vector form, just as we said earlier. So we're going to represent this into the column vector form. So the 3 is going to be at the top again. So it is going to be like 3, and then the negative 5 is going to be down, and then it is going to be plus, and then OC we have it just as it is. So there's no need of us taking it to the negative. So it is going to be a plus, simply because in the statement and in the expression that we have made, those are equal. So we have OC in the statement and OC in the expression that we have made. So again, we're going to take the term which is combined with the I, which is 2, and then again we're going to get the term which is combined with the j, and it is 5. So 5 is going to be down like that. So that is what we're simply going to do. So vector AC is equal to, again you're going to get the simplification. So negative times 3, it is going to be negative 3, and then you're going to consider the one which is down. So negative times negative 5, it is going to give you the value which is positive 5, and then we're going to maintain the positive or the plus which is in between, and then we're going to write those which are on the right hand side, and it is going to be like that. So vector AC is equal to, we're going to do the simplification. So it is going to be like negative 3 plus 2. So you need to get those which are at the top, and then you also need to get those which are down. So it is going to be like negative 3 plus 2 as the one which is up. And when you say negative 3 plus 2, it will give you the value which is negative 1. And then 5 plus 5, it will give you 10. So that is how it is going to be. So we're going to have the term which is negative 1 at the top, and then we're going to have the term which is 10 as the value which is down. So vector AC is equal to negative 1 and then 10, like that. 10 is going to be down. So we're also going to get what we found as the direction vector AB. So we found the direction vector AB as negative 2 and then 5 plus 2t. That is what we found. So now what are we going to do after we reach this stage? So one thing that you need to keep in mind is that you're going to take note of something. You're going to consider the gradient. You're going to consider the gradient. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. So when it comes to the vector form, when you see the term which is combined with the I, it is the change in x. And when you see the term which is combined with the j, it is the change in y. But in this case, we have the column vector form. So in the column vector form, when you see the term which is up, when you see the term which is up, and in such a case we have negative 1. So when you see the term which is up, it is the change in x. So that negative 1, it is the change in x. And when you see the term which is down, and in such a case it is 10, that is the change in y. This even applies with the direction vector AB. So negative 2 is going to be the change in x, and 5 plus 2t, it is going to be the change in y. So now when you try to look at that line that we have, we're given in the statement that the point 2 comma 5, and in such a case that point which is 2 comma 5, we have denoted it with the letter C. So that point which is 2 comma 5 has been denoted with the letter C in this tutorial. So what are you supposed to know? So if these points which are A, B, and C are in the same line, you need to keep in mind that the gradient is equal along that line. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. So when you get the gradient for the line AC, it is going to be equal to the gradient for the line CB, and also for the line AB, and also for the line AC. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind. As long as it is along that line, the gradient is going to be equal. The gradient is going to be equal along that line. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind, simply because those points are along that line. So that is the concept that we're going to get. So in such a case, we're going to take note that the gradient for the line AB is equal to the gradient for the line AC. So for you to find the gradient, you need to get this formula, which is M is equal to the delta Y and the delta X. So that is what we have. So delta Y over delta X, and that is simply representing the change in Y over the change in X. So at the numerator, so we have the numerator as y2 minus y1. That is the change that they talk about. It is y2 minus y1, and then we have the denominator as y2 as x2 minus x1. That is where this one comes from. So the change in y, it is y2 minus y1, and then the change in x, it is x2 minus x1. So that is what we have. So delta y, it simply represents y2 minus y1, and then delta x, it simply represents x2 minus x1. So now we're going to find the gradient for each line that we have. So we have we found the direction vectors for the line AC and also for the line AB. That is why we are considering the gradients for those lines. So we are first going to consider the direction vector, which is AB. We're going to find the gradient for that line. So we have the delta y. We're going to start with the delta y, and in that case, we have the delta y as 5 plus 2t. That is what is going to be our y, our delta y. It is 5 plus 2t. So remember, in the gradient, if you want to find the gradient, you're supposed to take the delta y over the delta x, which is the change in y over the change in x. So we're going to write -2 as our denominator, like that. And then remember, we said that the gradient for the line AB is equal to the gradient for the line AC. So we're going to take the equal sign. It is going to be like 5 plus 2t over -2 is equal to. So let's talk about the gradient for the line AC. So gradient for the line AC, it is going to be like, we're going to consider the change in y, or you can say the delta y. It is going to be 10. In such a case, that is what we have as our delta y. It is 10. And then what about x? So we have the delta x as -1. So these two are equal. So what are we going to do? We're going to cross multiply. That is what we are simply going to do. So we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to have the -1 is going to be multiplied by the 5 plus 2t. So we're going to say -1 open parenthesis 5 plus 2t, and then close parenthesis, and then is equal to the -2 is going to be applied to the 10. So it is going to be multiplied by the 10. So it is going to be -2 open parenthesis 10, like that. So negative times 5, it will give you the -5. It will give you the value which is -5. So -1 times 2t, it will give you -2t. And that is equal to -2 times 10, it will give you -20. That is what we have. So the next step that we're going to take is that we're going to make t the subject. So we're first going to start with that one. We're going to take -5 to the other side of the equation, and when you take it to the other side, it is going to be the positive value. So it is going to be like negative 20 plus 5. And when you say negative 20 plus 5, it is going to give you the value which is negative 15. So remember, our main objective is to find the value of t. So we're going to make t the subject, we're going to divide both sides of the equation by negative 2. So when you divide negative 2 to the left hand side, it is simply going to be 1. So we're going to have the value which is 1, and 1 times t, it is going to give you t itself. So we're going to have t is equal to, so t is equal to negative 15 over negative 2. And when you say negative 15 divided by negative 2, it will give you the value which is 7.5. So this is how you find the value of t. So you can see that therefore t is equal to 7.5. So this is how you easily score marks in the exam. This is how you easily score marks in the exam. I hope you have gotten the concepts. We have now come to the end of this tutorial. I hope you haven't forgotten to subscribe, to like, to share, to comment. So this is how you easily score marks in the exam. Thank you for watching. See you to another video tutorial.